Richard, good evening. It is my privilege this evening to share the word with you. I decided to give Sean the night off, so I hope that you won't leave because it's an unfamiliar face. Before we went on lockdown, we were speaking about how we are people of purpose. Tonight, I want to tell you that that hasn't changed. I can guarantee that there isn't somebody who hasn't been affected by the coronavirus and the impact it's had on businesses and jobs, etc., etc. We know that this virus is not from God, but we also know that whatever the enemy has intended for evil, God turns it around for our good and for his glory. This evening, I've entitled my message Dancing in the Dark, because even in these uncertain times, we are still expected to live out our purposes. God's plan for our life cannot be stopped or paused on because we're instructed to stay at home and go to work or work from home. God still expects us to live as if we are people of purpose. Therefore, we still need to. We can see many examples of people in the Bible who, despite being persecuted back in those times, they continued to live the way they're supposed to and still give God glory. We know that when we spoke about a few weeks ago about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that they were willing to go into the fire instead of worshiping the king. And after all of that, the king had then acknowledged God. Another example I want to look at this evening is Paul. Many of us know his story, how he persecuted Christians and was then he then had an encounter with God and then went on to write a large portion of the New Testament. On his journey, Paul was beaten over and over. He was even imprisoned, but he continued to plant churches wherever he went. He never gave up when times were tough. He continued. Whenever there's trying times, our go-to as Christians, and myself included, is to profess that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and that is so true. But what Paul says before that verse is what is the attitude that we need to have. In Philippians 4, verse 12 to 13, he says, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. So we talk about doing all things through Christ, but do we even? You see, we don't need to wait until we're able to meet again to sow into other people's lives. This virus has caused us to close the doors of churches, but we're still able to meet on platforms like this on a Wednesday and have church in our homes on a Sunday. If we keep waiting to have everything, to have full stomachs or have plenty, we will continue to live in the sidelines. We will be slaves to a lockdown that we create in our minds even when all of this is done. You see, Paul, even in prison, he turned people to Jesus. He turned people to God so that they could believe. Yet, we wait for the right time or for some miraculous sign in order to step up and do what we're supposed to do. I read online that it takes approximately 10,000 hours of practice to become a professional ballet dancer. They illustrated that it would take 9 years to reach that goal if you practice strictly for 21.3 hours a week. Can you imagine setting aside 3 hours a day for 9 years to practice on something that you might not even be able to do professionally? Once a dancer becomes a professional, they practice up to 10 hours a day in preparation for a performance. I also read that the longest ballet performance was 4 hours, including intermissions. So essentially, when it comes to ballet, the hours you spend practicing before you even become a professional and thereafter will never be more than will never be longer, than the actual performance. Seeing as only 10% of ballet dancers become professionals, it's clear that this isn't very easy. I know personally, I would have given up ages ago if I have to spend 3 hours on anything where there's not even a chance of it being something fruitful. Yet, when the odds were stacked against this 10%, they continued to practice for those 3 hours a day, every single day. When someone with a dream to become a ballerina, they cannot wait when there's a performance to only put in the 10,000 hours. They would have had to practice consistently for almost 10 years before it actually comes time for this. Similarly, we can't wait until all of these levels of lockdown is done for us to actually step up and do what we're called to do. We have been given the authority to no longer wait on the sidelines. If Peter focused on the darkness instead of Jesus when he was told to come and step off the boat, he was never going to do that. And we know that he only started sinking when he took his eyes off Jesus. He could have met him right where he was if he just kept his eyes on Jesus. We need to constantly see God. We need to keep our eyes on Jesus. And then when we step out of the boat, we can actually meet him where we are supposed to be, instead of sinking when the world tells you another 10,000 people died of the coronavirus. You see, in times like this, it is very uncertain. And people talk about how the doors of the church are closed. But we are the church, so we can step up and do what we have been called to do in uncertain times, so that when this is all over, God will receive the glory like he's supposed to. But I know that things are very uncertain in our jobs, in our circumstances. But what God has called us to do is never always just a financial thing. Spending some time picking up the phone to call someone to see how they are doing will mean the world to someone. You never know whose life you will change by doing such a small thing. So dance in this dark time. Dance when the odds are stacked against you. Dance even harder when it seems so dark. Never stop being who you are called to be. Make those 10,000 hours count, because we cannot do it when we're on our deathbed, when there's no more time left. You need to consistently push and be who you are called to be. Even when they say stay at home, you don't need to be in the streets to change people's lives. The widow could have turned Elijah away because she didn't have anything. She had enough for one more meal for her and her son. But instead, she sowed into his life, and in turn, they all survived the drought. So remember, it's not about waiting for an opportunity. It's about making sure that even when it's uncertain, you will be okay. You can do what God has called you to do. You don't have to wait until our president says, okay, you can leave home now. We can do so much. We can do everything through Christ. Even when our stomachs are empty, when we have little, and especially when we have plenty. You are not alone. You are not an island, and neither are the people around you. You are able to sow into their lives. Don't forget the power of checking in. Are you okay? Especially in an uncertain time like this. Don't forget, we are people of purpose. Our purpose is not tied to coronavirus and lockdown and regulations. God has not pressed pause on us living out our purpose, and neither should you. If you're not sure, I know a lot of us aren't, continue to seek God. Ask him. He will provide the answer. He will make a way for you to do what he has called you to do so many years ago, before we were even thought of. So don't lose hope. Don't panic and think that there's nothing that you can do. God is still in control, and he will never stop being in control. If you feel that on your heart that you need to help someone, do it. That is your opportunity to shine in such a dark time. Remember, ballerinas need 10,000 hours. How many more do we need when it comes time for it? So, I'm going to say one more time, don't give up. Don't lose faith. We are people of incredible, incredible purpose. Don't forget it. Don't say, oh no, coronavirus. God will make a way. And that is all that I have to share this evening. you.